I've got some flowers here, and actually they're artificial flowers. I tell you, the artificial flowers look so real nowadays. And these are made of plastic and some sort of cloth. I'm not sure what sort of cloth. So what I want to see is if we can use these in resin, and if so, whether we need to seal them or not, or how we go about using them. So I'm going to be using a deep mould for these, so I will be using a deep pour resin, and I love this bookends mould. It works really, really well, and it's great for putting flowers and things in. So what I'm going to do first is decide what flowers I'm going to use in which one and cut these down, because they don't need to be as long as this, and you can cut these using normal scissors. I will link these in the description below as well, so you can get hold of them if you need to get hold of some. But to be honest, you're probably better off going and looking at your dollar stores or your pound stores or your cheap shops, because they often do lots of these sorts of things for a better price. So I've decided that that's the little posy that I made, and it was really easy to put together. All I did was I got my rose like this, one of the pink roses there, one of these yellow flowers. I want them to be the same, because if not, it's not going to be a good test. Because I don't know if these are going to hold on to bubbles a lot more than other things would hold on to bubbles. Then I'm putting some of these little yellow flowers in there as well. And then some leaves either side, like that. And then I'm taking some thin wire, and then I can wind that around the stems quite tight, because I don't want them to come loose a few times. There we go. And then that is together. And they look very similar now. So I can go ahead and prepare the rest of the stuff and show you what I'm going to do there. So these fit nicely into there. But what I want to do, like I said, is one of them I'm going to seal. And I'm going to seal it using the crystal clear varnish. So pop my mask on, move this out of the way. I'm working on brown paper because I don't want to get varnish onto my silicone mat. It's not going to ruin it, just I can't be bothered to clean it. So all I'm going to do is spray this lightly over it and then let that dry, and then I'll go over it again with a second spray and we can see what happens. Then we can compare it with the one that isn't sprayed. So I'm going to be working in reverse with these because I want the bottom of the mould to be the front of the mould when I'm finished. I've trimmed some of these leaves off that were poking over the top, and what I'm going to do now is show you how I'm going to suspend these into the resin. So before I mix my resin, what I'm going to do is cut myself some cardboard out in the same shape as the top of this mould. It doesn't matter if it's a little bit bigger, but I need to ensure that it is fully covered the edge of this mould, and you'll see why in a second. And this is going to help me prevent any of those flowers, because I don't know, because they're not real flowers, from floating up to the top. This is quite a thickish cardboard. Obviously I can't cut a straight line to save my life. It doesn't matter as long as it goes over the actual mould itself. So let's have a look. Yeah, that is absolutely fine. So what I've done is I poked a little hole through there and I've pushed that through. And now I can place that into my mould like that. I can look underneath to see how well it's sitting. And I'm happy where everything is sitting. Now I'm not going to fill this mould up to the very top anyway. And you'll see what I'm going to do with this to finish it off shortly. But yeah, I'm very happy with how that's going to sit in there. And I've taped that up. All I have to do is, once I've put my resin on, it gives me a bit of space to put a weight on. So this is where I can trim this down. I know I want that to sit in there, around about there. So then I can poke that through, like I said, leaving a bit of a gap between the flowers and the cardboard. Still all nicely wired together, so it's not going to come apart. Move that around to where I want it. Hold them there like that. Turn that over. Yep, that's not pushing too much on that base. And there we are. And now I can mark underneath that this is the sealed one. So I know that that is the sealed one. And I know that this one is the one that isn't sealed. So the resin I'm going to be using for this one is the T-Expert Deep Pour Black. It's a brilliant resin, and it's a 2 part A by 1 part B by weight, not volume. But I'll show you how you can get over that really, really easily in a second. And it is workable for quite a long time, easily long enough, over an hour. It does take up to sometimes 72 hours to fully cure, depending on how deep you're going. But the great thing is you can pour it up to 5 inches deep, which is so important for these molds. So how I do this, if you're used to doing things by volume, then what I do is I mark out my measurements on here. So for instance, I got 600 mil, because I know each one of these takes about 600 mil, and I've divided that into 3, so 200 and 400. So I now know that I need 400 mil of this part A. But because I need to do it in weight, all I've got is I've got it on my scales, and I can measure out 400 mil. So that's 400, and let's say 490 grams. So what I need to do is half that, so that's 245 grams, and that's how much of the part B I need in weight. So 245 grams. So tear my scales. There we go. I've got 245 grams of this, and I know that is now going to give me plenty of resin to fill those up. Now I'm going to mix this for about 4 minutes, and then I will check it and I'll see if there's any cloudy streaks in it. If there isn't, then it will be ready, really mixed. If there is, then I'll carry on mixing it for a bit longer. And I'm going to show you how I try to avoid trapping bubbles in my flowers once I put them in. So what I'm going to do first is pour some of this into the bottom of my first mold, about a third of the way up, okay? And then I'm going to let that sit for about 2 minutes in there. We've got plenty of working time, don't forget. Now, these are the ones that are sealed, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to push these down into the resin that I've got mixed up in there, and just let them sit in there as well for a few minutes. Again, we've got plenty of time. Taking one of the silicone implements, or I'm going to go around all my corners and release all my bubbles that have got trapped in there. Now, as I said, this is going to release its bubbles over a period of time anyway, because it's such a lovely thin resin and it cures up really, really slowly. But what I am going to do is help it along by popping some of my bubbles with a long neck lighter. And popping these into your resin, I do this with fresh flowers as well, will really help avoid too many trap bubbles. Just giving it a bit of a jiggle. And now I'm popping it in this other bowl just to drain while I fill this up about to the level that I'm looking for for the final piece, which is to there. So that leaves me about that much from the top. Again, I'm going to leave this for a good 10 minutes for these bubbles to come up, and then I can burst them again. So I'm now ready. I've burnt off the second lot of bubbles, and I can put this in quite gently and let this sink down slowly, using some tweezers to push in any that are sticking up too much. Okay, and now that's on there, what I'm going to do is add a little bit of weight onto this. And it won't need much weight, just a little bit of weight. So a little pot with some sand in. That'll hold that down in position where I want it. And now I can just leave that to cure up. That, like I said, that is going to take about 48 to 72 hours to cure. And I will follow exactly the same procedure when I do this one. And then we can have a look and see which one works, or if any of them work. So these are all cured now, the base bit. And now what I want to do is get these sorted out and ready for the final stage. So I'm going to take off my piece of cardboard. Try not to dislodge the casting from the sides of the mold, because obviously I don't want my next stage to slide down the edges. There we go. So that's come out lovely and clear, and it always does with deep pour resin. But what we don't want is, we don't want all these bits showing. I'm going to show you how to get rid of those in a second. So now I've got those off, what I'm going to do is cut any bits that are sticking out down, so they don't come through the back of my final piece. I want all the pieces that I cut down to be below the rim of this mold. If you can't get a pair of scissors in, sometimes it's just as easy to go in there with a little bit of a blade like this. So now I've trimmed those up, what I need to do is trim these stems so they're below as well. And all I'm going to go is in with my wire cutters, because these are wire stemmed. Take my wire off and then trim the stems right back. And then everything I got here should be below this little line here. And now I can put the base colour on. So I'm going to quickly mix up my resin and then I'm going to do that. For the top coat, what I'm going to do is use the T-Expert Crystal Clear. I don't need to use a deep pour on this because it's quite a shallow area that I'm going to be doing. This is a 1-to-1 resin. It's really easy to use and it's a great resin for shallow pours or medium pours. I think I have, when I look at this, I think I have dislodged it from some of the sides. So if I get some rundown, I'm going to have to deal with that because I was a bit rough with them, to be honest. So I've got my resin mixed up now. What I'm going to do is, because I want a red background on this, I'm going to add some of the T-Expert pigment paste to this. You don't need much, by the way. You only need a little bit. Brilliant paste. Brilliant, vibrant colours. Make sure you mix it in thoroughly so you haven't got any streaks. Unless you want the streaks to be in there, then you don't need to worry. And now I'm going to add some glitter. And this is the ultra fine glitter I'm using, so that'll stay nicely suspended throughout. And I'm adding gold, so you've got a bit of a contrast when you mix it in. And now I can pour this slowly over the top of this. And where I think there might be some trapped bubbles, what I'm going to do is, because I think there could be some trapped bubbles in this bit here, all I'm doing is using a silicone tool. So where I think there might be some of those bubbles, I'm just loosening that up and pushing underneath that and then letting it flow in and then pouring this until it goes right to the top like that. Yeah, look, it is going down the side there because it just let a big bubble out. It's such a pain. Oh, I can see it going down the side. Oh, how annoying. It's so important not to dislodge your casting from your mould when you're putting a top on like this. I should know better, shouldn't I? But there, we all make mistakes and I'm not going to change it. It's always good for me to leave my mistakes in because then, you know, even us YouTubers are human and we're not perfect and things don't always work out for us or things go wrong. So now I've got those full to the top. I'll leave those for about 5 minutes and then I'll go over them with a long neck lighter. And then leave that to cure overnight. Well, these have all cured now and they're ready for me to demold. I am a little bit nervous because, as you can see, a couple of bubbles did come up where this had got dislodged a little bit. I'm just hoping the resin hasn't gone down the side. It doesn't actually look like it has. So let's get these out of the mold. Now, the first one is the one that I sealed. So let's have a look at that. Oh, that has come out so pretty. Not a single bubble in that I can't see. I don't think you would know that these weren't real flowers, to be honest. They are so good and they've come out so pretty and the colours are awesome. I particularly like putting a backing on it, and I particularly like putting a backing on it with glitter because I think that really does help show them off. But obviously, if you don't want a backing on it, you can just do a clear pour on that last bit. And no resin has run down there. So that is a relief, I have to say. And because I cut the flowers, it does look like they're just sinking into that background. Now, this is the one I sealed. And actually, a little bit of the seal has peeled off the actual flower itself, the cloth. And you can see it there. I'm not sure why that would have happened. So let's have a look at this one. This is the one that I didn't seal first, so we'll see if it made any difference whatsoever. And I actually don't think it has made any difference whatsoever. Maybe the flowers are a little bit whiter and they haven't changed colour a little bit. Now, that little bit there that has flaked off, that is easy to avoid that. All I need to do is leave a little bit more time in between sealing them and maybe not be so heavy-handed. But overall, I don't think a great deal of difference. If I had to rate them, I would say the one with the sealer has actually got a nicer covering. Maybe not. I don't know. What do you think? I'm not actually sure they do look any real different. But the artificial flowers in there are just amazing. I do think they look real. Try and get that so it's not shining on it. They definitely look real. The quality of artificial flowers nowadays is awesome. They're not going to fade. They're not going to discolor. And again, you can see no bubbles in that. No, I think it's the angle of that flower that's caused that to look slightly different. Because when you look at it like that, they are actually almost identical colors. So maybe it's the depth or the angle. I don't think the sealing has made any difference to it whatsoever. And this is why it's so important to use the right resin for the right job. That was a one pour with the deep pour resin to do these flowers, and they've come out brilliantly. And then just the second pour to do the back. I hope you found that useful. I really have, and I will definitely be using a lot more of these artificial flowers in the future. I'll link everything that I used today in the description below. Be sure to check out the video I've got coming up next if you want to learn more about resin and some techniques that give a really advanced finish without too much work involved. Boom that like button, hit that subscribe button, and most of all, enjoy your resin. Take care. Bye.